One of the most popular questions that I ever receive is, does the Bitcoin halving actually matter? Will it impact price when the halving occurs next? In order to understand the Bitcoin halving, we have to go back in time. There was 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes that came into circulation for 4 years after Bitcoin launched. After that 4-year period or so, the 50 Bitcoin dropped to 25, cut in half, hence the name the halving. Now, Bitcoin's daily incoming supply, the number of Bitcoin that come into the supply every 24 hours, has been cut in half multiple times. We went from 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes to 25, from 25 to 12.5, 12.5 to 6.25. Now, of course, that's where we are today, which is about 900 Bitcoin a day. But every single time that the Bitcoin halving has occurred, Bitcoin's price has appreciated rapidly within 18 months. You can think of the Bitcoin halving as a supply shock. We go from 50 Bitcoin coming into the daily supply to all of a sudden it goes down to 25. If there's less Bitcoin coming into the circulating supply and the demand stays the same, then obviously price will go up. You don't need to go to very many economics courses other than the 101 class to understand how supply and demand economics would have this type of impact on price. Now, there's an entire cohort of the population that believes that the Bitcoin halving does not matter. Their thought process is aligned with the efficient market hypothesis. Now, the efficient market hypothesis has won major awards, and it is believed to be true by a lot of people. I personally happen to disagree with it, though. The efficient market hypothesis is the idea that everyone who has the same information in the market will come to the same conclusion. Obviously, that is not true, in my opinion. That would mean that no matter how much more work you do, you can't gain an advantage in the market. Instead, I actually think the exact opposite of the efficient market hypothesis is true. There are plenty of people who know that the Bitcoin halving exists, but there's plenty of people who don't. There's also plenty of people that know that it exists, but they can't tell you when it's going to happen. And on top of that, there may be many people in the market that not only know that the Bitcoin halving exists, when it is going to occur, but they don't know what the impact will be. And so you can give the same amount of information to two different market participants, and they will come to two different conclusions. That disproves the efficient market hypothesis. And therefore, that means that the Bitcoin halving will have some sort of impact. Now, we can argue and debate how severe the impact will be, but obviously, if you are going to cut the daily incoming supply of an asset in half by 50%, it is going to have an impact on price. As we have seen time and again in history, whenever the Bitcoin halving has occurred, there has been a rapid appreciation in price within the first 18 months. I do not believe that is going to change in the next Bitcoin halving. Instead, I actually think that more and more people will be aware of the Bitcoin halving, they'll know when it's coming, and they likely will get long Bitcoin and wait for that price appreciation to occur. The reason why that could actually have an explosive impact on Bitcoin's price is because the more people that are buying Bitcoin and holding it, waiting for this event, the more illiquid the asset is. And if all of a sudden the Bitcoin halving is coming, the media is talking about it, people on Twitter are tweeting about it, and everyone is waiting in anticipation, then more and more folks will speculate on the halving to occur. Therefore, they will go and they would try to buy Bitcoin. But if there's an increase in demand at the same time that you have an illiquid market and a supply shock, we will get a repeat of what we saw in 2020. Leading into the halving in 2020, I continued to write, tweet, and record videos all about what I thought was going to occur. I was shocked that we were going to get the Bitcoin halving at the exact same moment that the Federal Reserve and the US government was going to conduct massive quantitative easing.
So look, whenever we get to recessive periods or kind of slowing growth, central banks have two tools, right? They can cut interest rates, which they just did yesterday, and they can print money, quantitative easing. And so when they do both of those things, it usually takes anywhere between 6 to 18 months to actually feel the effect of those tools. And what it's going to do is it's going to coincide with the Bitcoin halving, which we can get into what that is. And so we think that cutting rates, printing more money, and then this systematic structure of Bitcoin is going to lead to higher prices for Bitcoin over a long period of time.
Now we have a major event happening in Bitcoin. Some would argue the greatest event for the cryptocurrency, the halving happening in May. Can you shed some light on what you expect to happen to price here in May?
Yeah, so I've been writing about this now for almost a year, really since last like May or June, saying, look, we're headed into an environment where the Fed was going to have to cut interest rates to near zero or zero. They've obviously done that. We've been saying that they're going to have to generate lots of quantitative easing. They're obviously doing that on a historic level, and those two things were to coincide at the same time or near the same time as the Bitcoin halving, which is the incoming daily supply gets cut in half from 1,800 Bitcoin a day to 900. Now, if you go back to 2008, 2009, remember gold drew down 30% in 2008 during the liquidity crisis. But coming out of that, when quantitative easing was announced, et cetera, from 2009 to 2011, we saw a massive increase in price, about 3x, and gold eventually hit an all-time high. Now, imagine in 2009, 2010, and into 11, 50% of the gold miners basically shut off their operations. So 50% of the incoming daily supply just disappeared. It would take a scarce asset, make it scarcer right at a time when all these investors are running to it, and the value of gold would have gone higher. That's essentially what I think is about to happen here. Everyone's going to look for inflation hedge assets, whether it's Bitcoin or gold. As they do that, you're going to get the Bitcoin halving. 50% of the daily incoming supply gets taken away. And so you're taking a scarce asset, making it scarcer right at the moment that everyone wants it in their portfolio. And therefore, I think that it provides this rocket fuel kind of for the future outlook of Bitcoin.
That meant that there would be more dollars chasing fewer assets. And therefore, price was likely to appreciate rapidly, just as we had seen many times before. And that's exactly what we got. Bitcoin went from around $8,000 to almost $70,000, about a 700% price appreciation in that 18-month window. And so, yes, Bitcoin has drawn down significantly since then, but we will have another halving about 2024. And when that 2024 Bitcoin halving occurs, I don't see any reason to believe that it won't have a positive impact on price. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell the future. There's risk with all types of investing. As we know, history does not necessarily repeat every single time, but we can use it as a guide for what the probability of the future is. And so, if we see a supply shock coupled with a rapid price appreciation, there is a good reason to believe that a future supply shock would lead to some sort of price appreciation. Now, the severity of that move is where I may not agree with the most hardcore Bitcoin maximalists. I don't necessarily think that a future halving is going to lead to thousands of percent of price appreciation. I actually think that each future halving will have less and less of an impact, but it still will have an impact. And so, as we head into the Bitcoin halving, make sure you understand what the halving is, how it technically works, when it is going to occur, and how historically that has impacted adoption, price, and other facets of the Bitcoin network. In this next Bitcoin halving, I expect a repeat of many of the future things. But as always, if I get new information that would change my mind, I fully reserve my right to change my mind. That is a sign of intelligence. I just have not yet found any information that would make me think the next time is any different than what we've seen time and again in history. Hope this helps you understand the Bitcoin halving and what potentially could happen. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree or do you disagree? And what do you think will happen?